All right, and we are live. Sorry, I was just sprinting around trying to get stuff ready. I am just going to retweet my live stream real fast and then we'll get into it. Sorry, we got a lot going on today. I have put out 3 new videos. Let me adjust here. I have put out 3 new videos today, one on my Patreon, one just a recorded video on my YouTube, and then this is going to be the third video today, a live stream. So I have been hustling, to say the least, today. Lots of news. We have a ton to cover. We have so much going on in Ukraine, a lot happening in the Middle East. So we're going to get to that probably closer to the end. We got a lot of updates, a lot of map updates to go over. So there's quite a bit going on. But I just wanted to welcome everybody in, take some time to just let people sort of file in. If you guys want to go ahead and put up where your, yeah, greetings from California. Exactly. Put up where you guys are at. You know, I always love to see that. I am going to just retweet my live stream on Twitter and then we will get started. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day today. I am having, like I said, a busy day, but that's not something very bad. All right, let's get into this. California, Kansas City. Oh, that's a new one. That's cool. I have family in Kansas City. Serbia, Minsk, Ohio, Fresno, California, South Africa, London, England, Colorado. Greetings from Prague, Czech Republic, South Africa, Pennsylvania. Very cool, guys. I always like seeing where that we have people in here from all over the world. I think it's pretty cool. Finland, Portugal, Alberta, Canada. Fantastic, fantastic. I also have family that lives in Alberta, Canada. Or I used to have family that lives in Alberta, Canada. I don't think they live there anymore. London, Bosnia, and Salisbury, England. I love your guys' steak. Macedonia, Moscow, Bristol. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, let's get into it. Enough lollygagging here. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into the map updates here. Obviously, you guys know the map of Ukraine. Things are happening quite quickly. The situation is very dynamic on multiple areas of the front. So over this next week, today's Friday, so probably by Monday or Tuesday, we should really start to see a lot of Russian progress in different areas of the map. There are going to be some required step backs here pretty soon by the Ukrainians in some areas of the front. So let's just go ahead and hop right into it, shall we? Here on the Chasiv Yar front, the Russian forces have again advanced on to, or further on to this elevated ground right here. This is the Russian goal. This is what the Russians want to capture. They're trying to expand this bridgehead so they can begin operations into the northern area of Chasiv Yar right here, securing this high ground. Same goes down here in the south. The pincer around Chasiv Yar has begun to develop. It's going to be incredibly hard to work the Russians to work their way out of these 2 small bridgeheads right here, but they are established, and as soon as they reach sort of a critical mass, they are going to become whole new issues for the Ukrainians in Chasiv Yar. So I would very, very closely watch the northern and southern flank of Chasiv Yar. I think we will begin to see some movement here as Ukrainian troops are pushed to the south to stop the breakthrough that's going to happen around Ugledar, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now that we got more people in here, I'm just going to do my little intro thing. If you guys aren't following me on Twitter, Telegram, or Patreon, you can go to the link in this YouTube description and find all of those links to those places. You can follow me for free on all of those different platforms, specifically Patreon. Obviously, you can follow me for free on Telegram and Twitter. But on Patreon, you will get access to a series called Demonetized. So if you're looking for additional content, I do combat footage over there. So if you guys are interested in taking a look at that, you can go to the Patreon and just sign up as a free member. You do not have to financially support me. If you choose to, I very much appreciate that. From this point on, I don't think any of my work is going to be behind paywalls. I'm just going to put out good work and then hope that you guys deem it worthy of supporting me in one way or another. If you don't have the means to financially support me, don't worry about it. Enjoy the content, get the news. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to make money, so that's what it is. Anything else? Anything else? Oh yes, on my YouTube page, I have uploaded a new prediction video, so please go check that out. And go check out my daily updates too. Every day that I don't do a live stream, I am doing daily updates, so go check that out. Thank you guys so much for listening to that short advertisement. I'm sorry. Hold on, I have to do something very, very quick. Okay. All right, moving down to the Toretsk Salient. Remember, I had talked about this area right here being mostly gray zone. So realistically, this front is sort of aligned kind of along this road, I believe. I don't think this pocket has a strong Ukrainian presence, but we're not going to mark it until we know for sure. And then same goes for this pocket down here south of Novosilka. We don't know if the Russians were able to maintain this assault, this breakthrough that occurred. But it is unlikely that the Ukrainians have very strong positions in this area at all. The Toretsk Salient map is a little behind schedule for sure. All right. Now moving over to Toretsk, you can see that the Russian forces have advanced through this eastern suburban area. Not a significant advance. They captured this large building right here. Probably doesn't exist anymore. But the Battle of Toretsk is continuing, and I'm going to put out a small prediction here. I think that there are going to be a number of small withdrawals, not major withdrawals, but small withdrawals, as soon as Zelensky returns from the United States on his little PR trip. They couldn't do it beforehand, but the situation around places like Ugledar is so bad that I can't see how we're not going to get some withdrawals just to more appropriate lines. So one of the areas I do expect this to happen is in Toretsk. I do expect at least some withdrawals from this pocket right here and this pocket right here, sort of stabilizing the line a little further back. Especially as the Russians advance into this industrial zone, I think we will see a withdrawal from Toretsk to set up a new defensive line somewhere back here, trying to keep the Russians off of the western bank of the canal. But Toretsk is definitely defensively compromised at this point. So heavy fighting is going on here. The Ukrainians are trying to hold this tooth and nail, but as we can see, the Russians are still advancing, and Ukrainian manpower is just becoming such a massive issue that they're not able to properly respond to Russian advances. If you guys have questions and you want me to answer them during the live stream, remember that you can always ask through super chats. That way I see them and then I'll put them up on the screen and absolutely answer them. If you guys do have questions that you want to ask, I usually get to them at the end, but I don't get to everybody's. So if you want to Kalibrated when you ask the question or put like question something, that's a good way for me to actually see it in the chat. Okay, moving over to the Pokrovsk front. This is a major advance here. The Russians have advanced out of Novohordivka. Remember, they control both of these terikons, these industrial mining hills. So they control the relative high ground in the region. They are now pushing out into the remaining defense structures, one of which, the last major one, is along Chasiv Yar here. The Russians have advanced out and have pushed up towards this little pond area, as well as to the southern end of Chasiv Yar. Really, these villages don't matter at all. It's the defensive line and the structure that's built within the villages that is more important. But again, this is a significant, it's another advance in the direction of Pokrovsk. Russian forces are now 8 miles from Pokrovsk and less than a mile from Minhorod. So even with all of the Ukrainian rotation to this side of the front, it was not enough to prevent the Russians from, again, advancing The Ukrainians are taking heavy losses here. They are trying to counterattack in some areas unsuccessfully. The Russians are basically just sort of holding out and waiting for, again, Ukrainian forces to be attrited in this area, but they're still making advances. Okay. All right, moving down here, we have a small Russian advance here north of Rinki. Most importantly, though, is that it is being reported now that Russian forces have entered Sukrin here, which is a very big deal because of what this town, I guess, sort of symbolizes here towards, this pocket of defense. So this town, first of all, it relies on, it has a railway that runs through it, so it is already sort of a boundary, a geographical boundary. The Russians would like to capture this town, obviously, gain access to the railroads that run both east and west here. Once that happens, they should be able to basically, I'll just kind of do this real fast, create a line right here. This becomes a pocket for the Ukrainian armed forces because there is no way for them to get out to the south. Go orange and make it thick. There you go. So this is sort of the pocket we're looking at right now for the Ukrainians. And really all that has to happen is the Russians have to make it down into this triangle of villages right here. They're not, significant. There is a small river barrier, but very, very crossable for the Russians. You can see it's almost like non-existent in some areas. If the Russians are able to push down into these this little tri-settlement area right here, they will cut off this entire pocket. If you look down to the south, there is no way for the Ukrainians to escape here. There's the Vovocha River that's blocking them. The Russians are in very close proximity to this land crossing right here, if the Ukrainians were able to cross in this area. And this bridge, and this bridge are all out of action. So there is no way to cross this reservoir. From a tactical perspective, this area is slowly becoming an absolute nightmare for the Ukrainians. There's just nothing back here to really prevent the Russians from pushing down and capturing all this, other than Ukrainian manpower being committed to hold this northern flank. But I mean, you can already see how deep this salient is for the Ukrainians. If they even hold any positions over here, I'm not quite sure about that. I don't know why they would be holding positions over here. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I imagine they're probably holding positions along this Vovocha River right here in these small defense fortifications. But once either these fall or once the Russians push down here in this three settlement area, we should see this pocket collapse for the Ukrainians. Again, if you look at the map too, you can see that Avdiivka's back here. It would mean that the Russians have basically captured something like this since February. Yeah, something like that since February has been captured by the Russians, which is pretty crazy for this conflict. I mean, that's a very sizable chunk of territory, and most importantly, it has Avdiivka or Chitny. They're up against Pokrovsk, so this is a very valuable chunk of land that the Russians have captured. Oops. Okay. All right, moving down here to the southern Donetsk front. Remember, this is where I had predicted the majority of the Russian offensive would be happening. We can see here that just south of Konstantinivka, the Russian forces have captured all of the 0532 highway and have progressed in the direction of Katarinivka. Down here to the south, the same thing applies. It's basically just this open area right here falling now that Vadyan and Vadyane have both been captured by Russian forces. And we should just sort of continuously see this progression in this direction. There's not a lot of strong defensive fortifications here. Kharkove is now being pressured from the east. It is now on the front line. So these settlements are going to likely be capitulated slowly one after the other. Same goes for these two down here. There's just not a lot for the Ukrainians to use to defend here, and they will likely have to back behind this river. eventually and defend Kharkov. So again, I'm expecting sort of this entire southern pocket to collapse. Most importantly here, though, the Russians have secured a logistics route on the 0532 highway from Donetsk city down to Ugledar, and then that will run up to Velika Novosilka once Velika Novosilka is captured, and we'll be able to basically feed this entire southern line. They will also gain access to the original railroad that's in this area that was unusable for Russian train transport because of its proximity to the front. That front is now getting pushed away. The Russians will now have not only the new rail line that they built from Rostov to Crimea through the south, through Mariupol and through Melitopol, but they will also be able to use the more northern route that runs through Donetsk. So yeah, the Russian logistic situation in the east is going to become much easier. All they'll have to do is push the Ukrainians off of this portion of the 0532 and then finally secure Ugledar to gain full access to the 0532. However, there is a paved road that comes out from Marinka just to the east of the 0532, runs through Novomihailovka, and then goes forward through Konstantinivka to the 0532 and then down to Ugledar. So this is now open for Russian logistics, and you're going to see the effects of that in due time. The Russians are going to have a much easier time delivering manpower, ammunition, whatever they need to the front, while the Ukrainians are going to have a much more difficult time now that they are getting pushed back. All right, moving down to Ugledar. You guys can see that the situation has become dire here for the Ukrainians. I did want to point out that this area right here is not confirmed with geolocations. So I have the city of Ugledar now encircled by the Russians physically. I did this for a couple reasons. There may not necessarily be Russian presence in this exact area. I imagine there's probably Russian presence in this storage unit area over here now, or garage area. I don't know what you call it. It looks like storage units to me for the people who live in the town. Same over here. It just looks like temporary storage. There might not be Russians necessarily in this open field right here, but there are Russians directly here. There are Russians right here, actually now physically blocking one of the roads out of Ugledar up to Vadyan. The Russians have also cut the road here north of, I'm sorry, not Vadyan, north of the #1 coal mine. And this other road has been taken out of action. So whether it is a full physical encirclement, like the Russians are standing in this area right here, preventing the Ukrainians from leaving, or if they're on this side and on this side and the Ukrainians can't leave because they'll be ambushed and destroyed, it doesn't make a difference. Ugledar is physically encircled. It is a physical encirclement now. The Ukrainians cannot leave. The situation is becoming extremely dire. There are reports that between 200 and 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers are in Ugledar. I do not think that there are 1,000 people in Ugledar. I don't think that there have ever been 1,000 people in Ugledar since the beginning of the war or since the beginning of its transformation into a fortress. There probably was a population of about 1,000 when it was a full mining town. But it makes no sense to have that amount of force concentration in a single area like this. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. So my estimate is that there's probably a small battalion worth of territorial defense units fighting, or defense soldiers fighting in this area, something in the range of 200 to 400. But I don't even think that there's 400 people in the town right now. I bet if you added up all of the remaining buildings, you could say that there are probably 10 Ukrainian soldiers in each one of these apartment complexes. And then you could find your total, right? In the basements and stuff like that. There's just no space here for 1,000 people. I mean, you could cram them in, but it makes no sense militarily. I don't think that the Ukrainians left that many individuals in the city to hold the defense. But they were left. They are surrounded. They have two options. They can either surrender or they can be destroyed. That's their options. And if you guys go watch my new Patreon video, my new demonetized video, I have multiple videos in that where I cover basically this northern part of Ugledar, where we've seen numerous FPV strikes, Ukrainian units trying to retreat, getting taken out, VOG grenade drops up here. Basically, if you try to exit Ugledar through this area, you are definitely under FPV and other reconnaissance drone watch, as well as small arms fire from both sides. So not a great option. Hey Scott, how do you rank the order of strategic significance? Ugledar, Toretsk, Pokrovsk, Chasiv Yar from highest to lowest. Huh, interesting. Right now, Pokrovsk is the most important. This is a 6 highway mega city right here that the Russians are approaching. It was the logistical hub for the entire southern flank. Also into Konstantinivka, along with Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. So it is extremely important. It is now a frontline city. Logistics are not being run out of here the same way that they originally were. And another thing that you have to remember is that Ukraine has almost 50% of their steel industry in Pokrovsk. So the city being destroyed and lost does not benefit the Ukrainian economy. It is going to slash their steel exports probably entirely. Not because you don't export all of the steel you make. You have some for domestic use. So Pokrovsk is probably the most important. Toretsk is probably the least important now with the developments up here into Chasiv Yar. And I think a stronger defense line could be made back here. Although I don't know what the Ukrainian defense situation is in Konstantinivka. I don't know if they have any options. If the Russians get through Toretsk, they might just be able to blow through these settlements. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not on the ground. I can't see the trenches that have been built. I can't see how many troops Ukraine has left, how much ammunition they have around. There's unknowns when it comes to analysis. So Toretsk is probably the least important. Let me just see what you asked. Toretsk, Pokrovsk, Chasiv Yar. Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk are very close. If Pokrovsk falls, there's nothing behind it, so the Russians could create major war-ending issues for the Ukrainians if they capture Pokrovsk and push through. If the Russians capture Chasiv Yar, however, they will gain access to the entirety of the high ground here, and then they'll begin pushing up the canal along the high ground, and that will allow them to begin pushing into Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Druskivka, Konstantinivka, all of these big towns right here. So it depends. It depends on what you see as the Russian goal for the future, for advance, right? Tactically speaking, Ugledar is the most important right now because it's being lost, and it's going to be lost the quickest, and it's going to have the largest repercussions on the front immediately. But losing Pokrovsk would be the end of the war. Losing Chasiv Yar would be the end of the fighting in the east, right? Those are. So I would say that right now, tactically speaking, Ugledar is the most important area of the front. Strategically speaking, Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk are probably equal in that regard. Hope that answered your question. Thank you for your super chat. But yeah, so the Ukrainians are stuck here. I expect that this will be wrapped up in the next 24 to 48 hours, most likely. The Ukrainians just can't hold out here for very much longer. And I saw a lot of people saying that, there could be, 50, see, exactly. Military summary says 1,500 to 2,000. Why? You don't need that many guys. You just need a couple of guys on machine gun nests, a couple of guys operating ATGMs if you have any left, a couple of drone operators, and then mobile infantry you can move around to, conduct urban fighting. I really don't think there's much fighting going on in the city. I think a lot of the guys are stuck in basements. They don't have clear orders. They're just trapped. They're getting absolutely destroyed by the Russians. I really, really, truly, honestly do not believe that there are 15 to 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers in here. I could be wrong. The Ukrainians could have just thrown a whole brigade in there, basically. That's what the Ukrainian brigade is, like 2,000 people. So I don't think Ukraine has a brigade to even use like that, right? They don't have 2,000 people just sitting around to hold any given area. I think that there's probably 200 to 400 people in Ugledar, both actively fighting or capable of fighting and injured. Yeah, I really don't think that there's that many people. And this is another conversation that I've had. AMK mapping says calibrated. Do you think it's mainly the 110th left in Ugledar? Yeah, whatever the territorial defense units. I don't really, at this point, if you're not a well-established and well-equipped brigade like the 72nd, the 47th, something like that, these territorial defense units are just mishmash of completely untrained conscripts. We can just call it Volkssturm at this point. It probably is the 110th Brigade, but it is no original members of the 110th Brigade, and they're all just fresh, you know, conscripts, fresh mobilized that are just being thrown into this pocket. So, yeah, I think that the 72nd has been entirely pulled out. I reported on that a month ago, like a month ago, legitimately, that the 72nd had been pulled out. And that's when I started putting up the Ugledar is on the clock. I could tell that the Ukrainians knew that it was about to be lost. They knew that they weren't going to be able to hold it. They pulled their good units out, and they committed territorial defense units to hold the line as long as possible. And that's why the flanks collapsed so quick, is because they just weren't able to do anything. They didn't have the ammunition. They don't have the drone crews. They don't have the artillery crews. They don't have anything. It's just meat holding this position. But one thing that I was talking about was there were probably 2,000 to 3,000 individuals in Azovstal. I think a total of 1,500 ended up surrendering after the entire siege went through. And if you look at Ugledar, you're talking about a much less developed facility. Azovstal is deep and it is huge. This is short. This is less than a mile across, right? If we go down to Azovstal, you guys can see just how fucking huge this place is. We'll go from corner to corner here. We're looking at 3 miles of industrial zone. And you can see that this is like huge facilities, huge buildings. It's all been destroyed. It's all been bombed out, but it was a sanctuary for the Ukrainian armed forces for some time. I mean, you can see how big this facility is. It's just massive. And only 1,500 Ukrainian soldiers came out of Azovstal. So to say that there are 1,500 to 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers in Ugledar, I mean, if you had a drone flying overhead, it would just be like an anthill. You would just see ants going all over the place. That, in my opinion, that is a ridiculous estimate. I don't see why that would be necessary. I don't see why the Ukrainians would leave that many troops knowing they're going to be lost. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think realistically, guys, there's probably 200 Ukrainian soldiers, or there were 200 Ukrainian soldiers at the time of the physical encirclement of Ugledar. So, yeah. From the Duran, I got that Brandon is postponing the JASM for Ukraine and is giving them glide bombs instead. If true, is he borderline trolling the... No, there's just nothing that... The U.S., if they want to give Ukraine like JASM or something like that, they can do it, but it's not going to change anything on the battlefield. The Russians will be able to develop countermeasures to that weapon system that the U.S. is currently utilizing. It would be no different than giving them Tomahawk cruise missiles, right? The U.S. has a limited number. It's not going to change the conflict, and they don't want the Russians to learn how to counter some weapon systems. Same goes for German Taurus. They don't want those to be sent. The reason why ATACMS, Storm Shadow, and Scalp were all sent is because these are all weapon systems that are going to soon be phased out, right? ATACMS is eventually going to be phased out. The U.S. has a little bit more ability to send ATACMS just because they have a slightly larger production. But in terms of Storm Shadow and Scalp, we haven't heard or seen any missile strikes for a very, very long time. Some people were claiming that those arms depots that were hit in Russia were cruise missiles. I don't think so. I watched reports of 140 Ukrainian drones being launched in that direction at the night that it happened. So my personal opinion on it is the Ukrainians just launched a bunch of drones that basically openly stored ammunition deep inside of Russia, and that went off. I don't think it was a cruise missile. And the reason why I don't think that, I do think that the United States just gave Ukraine the green light or they were planning on it, because Russia and Vladimir Putin, if you guys don't know, went in and actually had a meeting where they changed Russia's nuclear doctrine to include if a adversary uses weapons provided by another adversary of the Russian state, basically. So, Western missile systems being given to Ukraine. If those weapon systems are used on Russian territory, it will then bring the United States, it will invoke the United States into the war, right? The United States doesn't want that. This was the perfect move, I would say, by Putin and by the Russian Federation. The whole goal of Ukraine is to utilize a proxy to defeat Russia. If the US gets its skin involved, it is way too escalatory. The risk is way too high. The US doesn't want to do that. So not delivering JASM is a very good idea, because it's not going to change anything. It's only going to hurt your military, and it may bring you into a war with Russia, which will undoubtedly go nuclear, right? So I don't think he's trolling. I think he's trying to give them something so they can do something, because the US doesn't have anything left to give. That's the thing, is the US does not have the means of production, nor does Europe, to keep this proxy war going. Everybody in Washington knows the situation in Ukraine now. You can't hide it anymore. It's blatantly obvious. Zelensky asking to join NATO, asking for escalatory measures. That's not a good sign. That doesn't mean things are going good for Ukraine right now. The articles that have been coming out, I would recommend everybody go over and look at Rob Lee's Twitter. He has been posting a lot of Ukrainian soldiers quoted statements, and it is pitiful, guys. It is a nightmare scenario for the Ukrainians right now. So, yeah. I love your stream, and when you are on with others, good thing Zoom, as you are always way frightful tall but nice guy. Thank you so much. What is your take on Alexei Arestovich? Just curious. Is he even still a talking point? I think that he was sort of Zelensky's Medvedev. He was the guy who could just say whatever and never get in trouble for it. And he jumped ship a long time ago at the right time. He got out before this whole situation was stained by his name. And now he's probably just living his best life somewhere else. Good for him. Same goes for Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny got so lucky getting removed from that position. Yeah, guys, smash that like button. I'm just looking through the comments. Wait, but David said Ukraine had 100 magic brigades in the rear. Yeah, he said that during the 2023 counteroffensive as well. Never happened. I was waiting for that hammer. By the way, if you guys don't know, David D is a Twitter personality. He's a complete idiot. Has been MIA, I think, basically, right? Ukraine battle maps. No pro-Ukrainian sources are even talking about Ukraine right now. It's unbelievable. I don't understand how so much news is coming out. It's just not good news, so nobody's reporting on it. It's crazy. All right, I got to finish up with this map update real fast. We have one smaller update here, and that is in the Staromoyski area. The Russians have just pushed up the line just a little bit. And I wanted... Yeah, so my prediction video, which I recommend you guys go and watch that. Basically, I predicted the Russians will push for Velika Novosilka, Polye, and Orehiv, or one of them, not all of them necessarily, but gaining access to one of these crossroad villages, I think would be immensely beneficial for the Russians right now. It would force a Ukrainian rotation to an area of the front that is pretty calm and cold. While Ugledar is collapsing, while Pokrovsk is being threatened and all of that. So go check out that video. I talk about these three settlements and their importance to the overall strategic picture. Yeah, that is all I have for map updates today, guys. Awesome, awesome, possum. Let me go and do something real fast. Sorry, in the middle of the live stream here. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Apologies. All right. So let's talk about the Middle East. Let's talk about what is going on between Hezbollah and Israel. So there was a meeting at the UN in Washington. It was attended by Benjamin Netanyahu and an Israeli delegation, along with everybody else's delegations, obviously. And during Netanyahu's time in Washington, there have been two separate large assassinations or assassination attempts, I should say. One was successful so far, and the other one occurred today. The strike targeted the general secretary of Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah, and it is likely that he, along with the rest of Hezbollah high command, was killed. This occurred basically on the day of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the UN, where half of the UN walked out. Israel and the United States want war in the Middle East. There's no way I can really go around saying that now. You see reports that say Washington didn't know that this was going to happen. Bullshit. That's clear-cut bullshit. Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet decided on Monday that they were going to execute this strike on the Secretary General of Hezbollah. And if the Israeli cabinet knew about it, Washington knew about it. There's not a chance. There is not a single chance that there are not ears in that Israeli cabinet that report to Washington. That is a farce. Everybody in Washington knew exactly what was coming. They're doing this theater where they're trying to pretend like they're not the ones pushing for the escalation. Meanwhile, they continue to supply Israel with everything they need. They just gave Israel $8.7 billion in additional funding. The U.S. wants a war in the Middle East. And at this point, I don't know. I don't even know if they're going to get it, because Hezbollah seems to just kind of be sitting on their hands, and their OPSEC is awful. The pager incident, the multiple high-level assassinations. I don't know what the fuck Hezbollah is trying to do, but they're failing. They are outright failing, unless their goal is just to force Iran into a war. And the way that they're going about that is by taking these hits. I'm not sure, but the axis of resistance is looking incredibly weak. The IDF is looking incredibly competent and very aggressive. And that's not a compliment to the IDF. I think that they're making a horrible mistake in their approach. I think that they're doing basically what Ukraine did for Washington, the exact same thing. And yeah, I think that we are going to get a war before the election. I told you guys this over a year ago, when the election talks started to ramp up. I said I would not even expect an election, to be honest. And we've seen it. I personally believe that there has been attempts to assassinate Trump, and not by lone wolf actors. I do believe that there are multiple casus belli in the making right now for a war with Russia, Iran, and China. And it looks like the U.S. is in this extreme desperation mode where they're trying to make something happen everywhere. They're trying to give Ukraine the green light without, starting a nuclear war for strikes inside of Russia to cause more damage. They're trying to destroy Hezbollah and Iran, and then eventually shift to China. I don't think that Israel is acting alone in any way. I might have said that in the past, that Israel might have had a little bit more free agency, but after these recent events, there's no way Washington isn't fully on board with what's going on in the Middle East. And yeah, it's a wait and see sort of game. The Iranians just had a Security Council meeting. We'll see if they'll actually do something, or if they're just going to raise a red flag and then give a speech and pretend like something changed. I'm not sure. We will see in due time. But the situation is escalating severely. I pray for everybody who has family in the region. If you are in the region, I'm so sorry for what's about to happen. Again, the U.S., another forever war in the Middle East. It's just what we love to do. And yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I'm getting very tired of all of it because it's just lies. It's just pure lies all the time. It's all it is. It's just lies, 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 and lies and lies and lies. And I can't deal with it because I hate to have an idea of what is going on and then for somebody to just completely go back on the idea basically that they're creating. Like Washington talking about a 21-day ceasefire, and then while Netanyahu's at the UN, by the way, assassinates the adversary in a potential war. I mean, it's a ridiculous position, and I hope, honestly, what I hope is that I hope Israel invades southern Lebanon. I hope that they get their asses handed to them and they get bogged down just the way they did in Gaza. I don't want Israelis to die. I don't have an issue with Jewish people or Muslims, but the regime in Israel is genocidal. They killed like 300 people in that strike today for one person. Hezbollah isn't even doing anything to Israel. They have barely done any damage to Israel at all. But there you go. All right. Bakhmut still holds, right? Correct. Correct. What is the chance of Russia risking going for Odessa? I've said this time and time again, and I will always repeat it. If the Russians end up making it to Odessa, they will never fight for the city. By the time the Russians make it to Odessa, the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian regime, the Ukrainian military will not exist. It will be very hard for the Russians to cross the river otherwise. So just expect that if the Russians get Odessa, it will be through a capitulation, basically. All right, guys. I just wanted to talk quickly about the recent aid package. I saw a lot of people talking about it to Ukraine. The U.S. just approved an $8 billion military aid package for Ukraine. It sounds like a lot, which it is. It is $8 billion. However, when you actually look at the package, first and foremost, the money was use it or lose it money because a budget Ukraine was not included in the 2025 budget by Congress. So this was $8 billion that was left over. Either they gave it to Ukraine or it just went back into the budget. They gave it to Ukraine, obviously, because how else are you going to launder money? And what that basically means is that Ukraine for the next year will receive $300 million in bi or tri-weekly aid packages like they have been for the last year. So really no changes happened. This is just a continuation of the barely enough to maybe keep Ukraine in the fight, maybe losing. That's sort of the situation with that $8 billion. So it's not a massive deal. Do I think Narsala is dead? Yeah, I do. I think that I think Hezbollah is wildly compromised. I think that Israel is very competent with their intelligence. It's what they do best. They are winning this war without doing much right now. And Iran and Hezbollah are still just sitting on their hands, and they are going to be defeated waiting for rationale to take over. It's sort of the difference between Putin and the axis of resistance in the Middle East, Iran leading it, whatever. It feels like they are in the position that Russia was in during Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. They were hoping to diffuse through diplomacy. They were hoping to reach some sort of settlement somehow without, going into war, because war means the end of the Iranian regime. Probably. I mean, their nuclear sites are going to get hit immediately. It's going to be bad. Israel's going to go absolutely in on Iran. They've been wanting to for decades. So it's going to happen. It's crazy to me that Iran hasn't figured that out yet. Their closest as ally, Hezbollah, has literally had every single original leader removed. Now, if you understand how martyrdom works, you understand that there is a second and third in line for every single individual in Hezbollah to be replaced. They have contingencies. Hezbollah is not going to disappear because of a leadership removal. That's not how a jihad works, honestly. I'm not saying that Hezbollah is in a jihad, but that sort of idea. If you die, that's the goal, right? If you die, you get to go to heaven. So that if you're in a system like that, you're obviously going to have some redundancies in place, especially when you don't have F-35s, you don't have you don't have unlimited strike capabilities like the Israelis do. You're going to get hit. You're going to take losses. It's part of the equation. They know that, but just watching Hezbollah get ruined. If Iran does nothing at this point, I have lost any faith that they will ever do anything ever. Honestly. I think that Israel will just bully Iran for the next decade if they don't do anything right now. And then they'll just control the Middle East. That's sort of my position right now. Do or die. I think Trump told Zelensky basically exactly what the Democrats told him, but without the cope. There's no way you win. There's no way we can do anything to help you win. We can't provide manpower for you. And I think that going and seeing Trump was the worst thing Zelensky could have done. He should have just kept glazing the Democrats and, doing campaign trips with them, because that's the only way he's going to survive, is if the Biden-Kamala White House stays in power. Well, there are reports coming out from some people saying that he's not dead, but Hezbollah has not made a statement for hours. They did make a statement about their more recent strike inside of Israel and not about their leader being alive. So until Hezbollah says something, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to hold off on saying that he's alive. Israel has been pretty much on the ball with assassination strikes lately, so I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they did exactly what they said they did, like they have the last 7 times. Oh my God, the name of the freaking episode. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I forgot about this. I meant to talk about this after the map, but I got distracted with Lebanon. So we have had a series of Kinzhal strikes, and I'm going to take you over to the map so you guys can see. Technically, it was the same place where I believe, if you guys remember, I talked about the strike a couple of weeks ago that was confirmed. Well, it wasn't confirmed, but I had alleged that a Russian missile strike had potentially destroyed a refueling F-16, and along with its pilot. We had talked about that when that event had happened. We have recently had 2 separate Kinzhal strikes out of the north. Aircraft went up, MiG-31s went up, launched missiles over the Bryansk or Kursk regions here, and those missiles flew and hit the airfield in Konstantinovo. I don't know. But this airfield here was the original Su-24 airfield. It is one of the airfields that is capable of housing F-16s. It is up to that code. But I do not believe that the F-16s are actually stationed here. I believe that they are stationed likely over here in the Ivano-Frankivsk region, or down here in the Odessa region somewhere. There's different airfields all over. I think that they move quite frequently. But I think that this airfield right here is the primary refuel and rearmament base for the F-16s. So previously, this was the strike where the F-16 was lost, in my personal opinion. The Ukrainians say that the pilot was downed while performing combat operations. The United States says that a Patriot missile friendly fire incident was the cause of the F-16 downing. I disagree with both of those. I think it was hit on the ground, which is much more likely, by a Russian missile while refueling because F-16s are used for air defense primarily. So we had a series of strikes. We had 2 Kinzhals the other day, or 3 Kinzhals the other day, 2 days ago, that struck this base. It was then claimed that a number of F-16s were destroyed on the ground. And then today, we had another series of 4 Kinzhal launches, all struck the base. And this time, we actually got some visual evidence of the strike, and I will go show you that on my Twitter. So here is the airfield in the Kaliningrad region. You can see a very large smoke cloud rising up over the airfield. Could be aircraft, could be munitions, could be fuel. Probably not fuel, not dark enough. But something was definitely hit in the region. So, yeah, I think the biggest aspect of this is not so much that the F-16s got hit. They're not really doing anything. I don't think it's so much that the Kinzhals were launched. I think the fact that the Russians are using so many Kinzhals so loosely now and regularly means that production has increased tremendously. And it appears that the Russians are now less cautious about the use of these hypersonic missiles, which is a good thing in my mind, because it just means that potentially the war will come to an end quicker. And if that happens, that'll be a very, 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 very good thing for both Ukraine, Russia, and the world in general. Can't believe they didn't just intercept the Kinzhals like they always supposedly do. Hey, if they could, they would. All right, guys, that takes us to right around an hour, 51 minutes. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in today. If things kick off in the Middle East, I will probably start doing much more regular live streams. I'm not super excited about covering the Middle East because I just don't, it's not as interesting to me. But I will for news sake cover it for you guys. So be on the lookout for that. And, obviously, please go check out my YouTube channel for the other videos that I have uploaded, my daily updates, along with my new prediction video that just went up today. And don't forget to go follow me on Telegram, Twitter, and Patreon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate you all a lot, and I will see you on the next one. Have a fantastic weekend. Goodbye.